Hi, everybody. Well, let's see. It's Saturday morning and we are finished with Thanksgiving. And I just got off of a Skype call with my sister who told me that I had a bit of a mad scientist look. Um, but I've been thinking about wanting to send this discussion to all of you before next week. And so I hope the informality of my appearance is okay. I want to spend a few minutes talking about asking and giving, one of the relations in our model, because we focused on it a lot in the last session. So here's our model. We've talked about this quite a bit. And we spent some time practicing in our group emotional expression and providing safety. And then we also have done some self-disclosures and practicing validating. We did the self-disclosures of negative events, and then we did the self-disclosures of positive events. And the next item on our list that we were supposed to do was to practice asking and giving. But honestly, what happened spontaneously in our review of the case conceptualizations last week was a lot of practice of asking and giving. So I think I'm going to just talk about it now instead. So this is the third relation. And this is essentially my little primer on asking and giving that I like to give. So first, when we talk about asking, there's lots of different kinds of asks that we can be talking about. First, negotiating and asking for help with non-relational needs with a partner. So in other words, in my relationship, say with my wife, I have to ask her and negotiate my needs that don't have to do with her. So for example, right now I needed to ask her on a Saturday for a half hour to put together this video instead of spending time with her. Or perhaps we've just had a disagreement and I just want to take a walk by myself. Or perhaps I want to go skiing this weekend and she doesn't like skiing. Or I want to go out with a friend. Or I need support with something in my career. All of these non-relational needs are part of our relationship in that I can't just do it without considering her. Well, I could, but if the goal is to maintain connection, then what I really want to do is negotiate this with her respectfully and assertively. The second category here, negotiating relational needs. Now, obviously, this is even trickier. What do I need in the relationship with her? This could be as simple as, who do we want to invite for our Thanksgiving dinner? Should it just be her family, or should it be some additional friends and people from my lab as well? We have different needs there, but they're relational. They involve each other. Asking for closeness. Now, this is sort of the classic need here that is required for intimacy. So if you and I are just getting to know each other, I may say, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee. Or I may say, hey, would you like to go out to see a movie? Or I may say, hey, will you marry me? Or I just may say to my wife, let's go have a date night away from Zoe, et cetera, et cetera. Saying no, you may be curious why this shows up under asking, but I think functionally saying no actually does belong in this category. You're essentially asking your partner to respect your boundaries and to respect your saying no. And again, you can do this aggressively or assertively, but when we're talking about maintaining an intimate connection and maximizing the intimacy of it, it's best to see it as an asking and as a negotiation, even if you may not have much room for negotiating. Saying no in a way that pays attention to the other person, maintains safety and validation for the other person as you're saying no. Giving negative feedback, it's got the word giving in it. So you may ask, why doesn't it show up under giving? Well, if somebody has specifically asked you for negative feedback, then you are responding to their ask, and it does show up under giving. But if you are feeling a need to give somebody negative feedback, even though they haven't asked for it, then you're actually asking them to receive your feedback, and it shows up here. Same thing, asking for an apology, and then, of course, in response to the ask for an apology, giving forgiveness, or asking for forgiveness if you're not doing it in response. So the list of asking goes on and on. These are just some of the key ones, and I'm guessing you're thinking about how this applies in your own lives. A couple more things I want to say here. Let me move my face out of the way. First, both asking and the giving end are building on the previous relations that we've already talked about. The best way to ask from our perspective is to ask with awareness of your emotions and your needs, and asking in a way that's synced with your emotional expression and your vulnerable self-disclosure. I'm feeling sad. I let my partner know that I'm sad, and then I ask for closeness or soothing or support from my partner because I've expressed that I am sad. It's an obvious example, but it applies across the board. And if you think about doing all three, identifying your feelings and needs, stating your feelings and needs, and then asking for what you need, that actually lines up pretty well with how people tend to teach assertiveness training. The giving side is similar. The giving is synced with the earlier relations. So you're providing safety, you're providing validation. One way to put this is that your giving is empathically accurate. You're attuned as you're giving them what they need to what that person is feeling. I would say the most important thing about giving is that it's subtle and tailored to the actual request. So, stupid example, but just to make the point. Can I have a glass of water? I just asked for something. Now my partner may return with a glass of orange juice. That's not what I asked for. Unless they are so empathically attuned to me that they know that I really wanted a glass of orange juice and not a glass of water. And then the other thing I'll mention here is that giving needs to be reciprocal, and asking needs to be reciprocal. You can't just always be in the giving position. You can't just always be in the asking position. And this is where I think a lot of resentment and difficulties show up in long-term relationships, when it starts to feel not reciprocal. That one person's needs are being met more than the others. So we can talk about that. Okay. So I want to ask you all to consider what gets in the way for you of asking for what you need, and what gets in the way for you of really giving other people what they ask for. Obstacles on the asking end. Well, we talked about this the other day, the difference between Bertram's case conceptualization and Nadia's. Do you know what you need, or do we first need you to slow you down, give you space and safety to identify what you need, and help you with that? So lacking awareness of needs is obviously the first obstacle. Sometimes we ask too directly, in other words, aggressively, or sometimes we ask too indirectly, in other words, it's unclear. I think we can have problems on both sides, in that we ask too indirectly, and then we get frustrated and we ask too aggressively, right? We all know what that feels like. And then lacking emotional congruence, in other words, your ask is not synced with what you're feeling, and that can be confusing for the other person, right? What gets in the way of us asking in all these ways? Well, if we put our needs out there, then we're risking conflict and rejection. So that's obviously the big fear. We want to avoid conflict and rejection. And the easiest way to do that is to not put ourselves out there, to not really state, this is who I am, this is what I need. Another big obstacle is fear of becoming indebted to the other person, that you're going to become dependent on the other person somehow. And what's really important in addressing that obstacle is that the asking and giving is reciprocal. And then finally, asking for what you need can be experienced as a threat to your autonomy. We want to be individual and strong and independent and take care of ourselves, and asking for what we need threatens all of that. And if you think about it, all of this right here is really what makes intimacy hard in general. And again, this relation of asking and giving is just so central to intimacy, and it's so exquisitely difficult for all of us at times. Obstacles to giving. First, lacks empathic accuracy. We're not paying attention to what that person is feeling. And so then we give in ways that are not attuned. This is actually something we probably don't think about too much, but there is a ton of research support for it. If we give to other people in ways that are very obvious and visible and direct, it can really undermine that person's self-efficacy, feelings of autonomy, and it can undermine the relational quality. I hate to call her out on this, but my mother-in-law, Gwen's mother, does this all of the time. She is constantly trying to predict what I need. Like the other day, we're making Thanksgiving together, and she's constantly just like handing me things before I've asked for them. Here's the butter. Do you want this pot or this pot? Should we do this next or this next? And it's like, stop asking me questions. Stop trying to predict what I need. I can't think for myself. And actually trying to collaborate with her on a Thanksgiving meal becomes very unpleasant for me, because she is giving in such obvious, visible, and direct ways. It becomes really difficult. When we're in a conflict, we want to give an apology or something like that, but we do it grudgingly or insultingly. Obviously, that is not received as responsive. And then, of course, the biggest problem here is that people in relationships often have needs that conflict. I don't know why my voice went up so high on that, but we often have needs that conflict, and that's really difficult. It's easy enough for me to state it right here on this slide, but getting that right, negotiating it sensitively such that we're talking about our needs and we're sacrificing and we're compromising and we're being assertive and trying to get the balance right and trying to be reciprocal. We're encouraging each other to really express who we are and what we need and to show up fully. That's what's hard about relationships, and what's beautiful about relationships when we get it right. So this is a revision of a slide that I showed much earlier on awareness. And I just want to go back to awareness for 1 second as we finish up this segment here. Because awareness, especially on the part of the listener in this asking and giving relation, is very important. So specifically, we've talked a bit about this, but the first thing the listener needs to do is discriminate what relation we're in. Is this person just self-disclosing, or are they asking for something specific? We oftentimes get this wrong. We're not matching the speaker here. The speaker is just self-disclosing, but we are problem solving and giving them something specific rather than just validating. And this need for matching increases as the speaker's vulnerability increases. The more vulnerable the speaker, the more mismatching causes trouble. Now, how do we know what the speaker needs? Obviously, this is hard. And the easiest way to increase awareness is to do what therapists do all the time, which is ask questions. So I like to ask my wife this question, and I wish I could remember to ask it more often. Do you need me to just listen and validate right now, or are you wanting advice and problem solving? Like, how do I match you correctly? Okay. That's just a repeat of that slide. So So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I just want to quickly touch on some of the conceptualizations we went over the other day, because I think you guys raised such beautiful and important issues. This is Bertram's conceptualization. And I filled in some stuff here on your behalf, Bertram, but hopefully it kind of it resonated with you. That in your case, we were really talking about giving you space. I'll put it here. I would say we need the listener in your case to really give you space and safety to slow down and stay in your awareness so you can slow down and really figure out what you need. I'm guessing, and this is very similar to me, honestly, that when it all happens so fast in real time, it goes too fast and we just can't kind of identify what we need quick enough. And only later, upon slow reflection, does it become clear. So the first thing needed to ask for what you need is the safety to slow down and the space to slow down, and trust that it'll be okay. I hope when we were going over Nadia's conceptualization, that was a good experience for you, Nadia. You were on the hot seat for a while, similar to the way Sudhir was the previous week. And I just want to point out now that you're asking for what you need, and what you think will help you feel safer, and then saying no when you don't do something, and then letting others know, really maps so well onto these fundamental asking domains that we talked about earlier. Here we are. Saying no and giving negative feedback. And so I really hope that we can help you improve on this in ways that meet your needs and in ways that are probably good for all of us, because it's difficult for all of us. This was Carrie's conceptualization as well. And sorry, I apologize about that break. And what I wanted to point out with Carrie, with your conceptualization, is again, just how what you are struggling with is so central to what we're working on. Asking others to help so you don't have to do everything yourself. I don't know, but I think I would call that negotiating non-relational and relational needs, and then allowing yourself to say no. And hopefully your family members will provide you the safety to do that, and give you the space and support to say no in the ways that hopefully we have been trying to do as well. And then I wanted to also briefly touch on Marcel's conceptualization here. Marcel, your conceptualization, I was looking at, you label it as asking, but I was looking at it as sort of an integrated courage repertoire, because you were really, your conceptualization really highlights how all of this stuff happens together, and I thought in a really exquisitely beautiful way. It's the difficulty, not just of asking for what you need, but simply expressing disagreement. You say when your wife says something you don't agree with, you shut down. You don't authentically and respectfully respond, and you swallow it all. And how, on the one hand, that could be simply, it might be enough for you in that situation to simply say, hey, I disagree. I don't need you to agree with me. I'm not down here. I'm not asking for you to agree with me, but I at least would like to register that we have a disagreement, and I want my opinion to be heard and respected. So that would be staying up here, versus I really need you to agree with me on this one. So I'm using your conceptualization, Marcel, to highlight how I think ubiquitous these issues are. Expressing your opinions with conviction, speaking more spontaneously and from the heart rather than rehearsing, to share my truth and to stand up tall for what I need. To share my truth. again, is really a beautiful, elegant way of stating this second relation. And then to stand up for what you need is this third relation. And again, I just think your conceptualization is like, this is what's important for all of us. And I just want to say I appreciate and resonate with the difficulty that you express. And I also want to highlight as we end this, that when we get this right, and I think we all have at least moments when we have gotten it right, and when both partners are able to support each other in doing this, then it's a beautiful thing. And this is what we want in intimacy. And this is what I want to help all of us try to achieve. Okay, that's it. I hope this was helpful. And I will see you all soon.